Today we are going to do this kind of image recognition type effect where it puts a box around whatever you want and it will label it. There's a little bit of a flicker there, and you can also set the frame rate of the effect, and then it can color it to however you want. This system is actually using the actor set from the radar system, but you don't actually have to use it that way. You can kind of feed in whatever actors you want, and then it's drawing from the tags and a structure set to know what to color things. And this isn't going to be a full tutorial, we're just going to do an overview. However, on my Discord I do have the full blueprints images. If you go to the asset sharing tab, this will let you see the different aspects that we're going to go over in this video in more detail if you want to check to see how yours is working. And you can click this and view open the link to get the uncompressed version. Okay. With that being said, let's jump in. The two kind of main sections of this system, there's two ways to do it. One is you override the onPaint function. I'm actually going to show you here. OnPaint, this is what you override. I already have it overridden here. And that's the only way to get this context. And the context is needed for spawning in boxes and text. However, this is kind of limiting because this is like a built-in function and it operates on tick by default. Let me put a pop filter, there we go. It operates on tick by default, and you can't really control the frame rate in which it spawns, which we can if we put it into a function. However, we can't use these draw boxes if we put it into our own custom function, which use these slate brushes. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at if we put it into a custom function. Right here, we're going to clear the children and use the detect actors list, which we set in not on paint, just the event graph here. So if we disable this on paint one and go to the event graph and set this on tick, we'll set it to 60 frames per second. We have to update the detected actors, and we're grabbing those from our radar system, which we made last video, or modified last video anyway. And we're updating this image recognition system like this. This is only on half the screen, just to show as well that you can technically mask it off using a canvas panel using clip to bounds. So I just had it on half the screen just to distinguish the two, but it's the same effect. Walking through the actual function, so we grab the actors, we're doing a loop for each of the actors. The big complicated part is this. I'm doing it in blueprints. You should probably do this in C++ if you want it to be faster. But the math looks pretty complicated, but the concept isn't that complicated. So we're using this get actor bounds node. I only want the colliding components. Like for example, some of my actors have like decals and stuff that I don't want it to care about. And we want the origin and the box extents. From the box extents, we want to derive all 8 corners of the box. So that's what this is doing. So this is the top, plus 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 corner. This is the plus plus minus corner. And we're basically getting every single corner of the box. So there's 8 of these. And then from this, we need to project it to the screen. Keep in mind this screen projection, this returns a Boolean. You think like, oh, okay, so if it's on the screen, it's true. If it's not on the screen, it's false. That's not actually how this works. This is actually anything that's within 180 of the camera, 180 degrees, returns true. So even if it's off your technical screen, it still returns true. So for example, look, like this corner is up here, right? But if I go off screen, you see it's still kind of registering, and it will even register there because it's within 180, which is actually kind of works for us. And we only want this to work if all 8 corners are on the screen, which is pretty generous since typically your full camera is less than 180, so this works fine. Once we have all 8 corners though into screen space, we want to figure out, okay, what is the minimum X, what is the minimum Y, what is the maximum X, and what is the maximum Y? And then we would get some vectors. So to get the minimum XY position and the maximum XY position, and we save those. After we save those, this is setting the color, by the way. This is very similar to the radar system, where we're just using this data structure, which has colors associated with enemy tags. So enemies are red, allies are green, that type of thing, and then it just saves the color, and we use it later when we spawn in what we want. But anyway, we loop through the actor, we get the origin, we get if it's on screen, and we get the 2 positions here as well. We check down here as well, hey, is this on screen? And if it is on screen, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to draw the box, which here we're spawning in a widget, and notice on the other one, like on paint, we don't actually spawn in a widget, we spawn in a draw box with the slate brush, but we don't do that here. We spawn in a widget, so that way we can actually spawn it in through a function without needing context. And these widgets are very simple. I'll go through these widgets. So I just have it on pre-construct, and I set the color of the box, and then the box itself is just right here. This is an image where there's just a line around the set edge. I set it to box, and I have a margin of 0.5. Notice I don't even have a canvas panel. I deleted the canvas panel and just put the box straight there. Same one with this solid widget. It's just an image though, even simpler. You don't even need to put an image in here. And then the last one is the text widget. Once again, no canvas panel. You kind of want a monospace font, which is where every character is the same. It's not mandatory, but in order to get the font to line up correctly, because we determine kind of how big to make this little font box. Notice it's shorter for the boxes. Let's go over something that's named objectives. See, that's longer. So we set that. So you kind of want a monospace font, which Droids is monospaced. I like this size, and then we also set in pre-construct, we set the text and the color. And for all of these, we have them instance editable and expose on spawn, which is, look right here. This is what lets us set the color and opacity through the color. And other thing is, notice I have to make a slate color. This doesn't feed, linear colors don't feed indirectly. This is pretty easy to do, just to make slate color. And you just do that, so that works. Okay, so we spawn in the box and we add it to the canvas. This is just our main canvas. Technically, you could probably add it to, you know, like a sub canvas or something, but we're just adding it to the main canvas. We then set the position. The position is where the actor is, which is, we grab the origin from up here, right? And we project this to the screen, and we set it to this position. However, we want to offset it by half of its size, so that way it's centered. So, and then we set the size, which is right here. So we have the min and the max, and then all this does is it basically finds the absolute distance between those two, regardless of where they are on the screen or where they're in the coordinate system. And then this is what's causing the flicker. Is I scale it up, I multiply it by either 1 or 0.02, and that adds this little kind of flicker effect. Notice if I bypass this, it's rock solid. So if you don't want that flicker, don't have that here, but that's what causes the effect right there. And then this sets all of that. After we do that, we want to draw the little section of the top with the little box and the text. So first we check, hey, is the tag, is there any letters in the tag? Like if there's no letters in the tag, then don't put a draw box up there. However, if there are any letters, if it's more than 0, then let's go ahead and draw the box. So the position, we can just grab this position and then we give it a little bit of an offset up, which in the 2D plane is on the Y, and I'm just offsetting it by 52. It'd be technically negative 52 since top left is 0, 0 for screen space. And then this is that solid rectangular box I was talking about, setting the color, adding it to the canvas, setting the position, and then the size ends up being, I multiply the Y is going to be whatever the offset is, so it's nice and snug up against the rectangle. However, the width of it will be determined by how many letters are in the text, the tag, which is why you need that monospace font. And then adding in the text, you need to, I just create it. I wanted, you can color your text whatever you want. The solution I found for myself is I inverted the text color except the alpha, so that way it always contrasts here. So notice it's pink where this is green, so that way you can always read it. And then I'm just feeding in whatever the tag name is. You could put in whatever name you want here, but the tag name just seemed like an easy solution. And then very similarly, I'm adding it to the canvas, setting the position, which is going to be the same as the box. And then you technically don't need this. But there might be some instances where the Z order gets messed up, so it's not a bad idea to set this. And then another important thing with the text is you do need to set this to simple text, otherwise it doesn't update on tick, which is right down here. Just click this. So if you don't click this and you set this to update, so if we turn off this and put it on tick, notice the text doesn't show up. But if you click simple text, there it is. So it must be simple text in order to work on tick, and it's more performant anyway, so you might as well. However, you can set it to whatever frame rate you want. Keep in mind this setting it to lower frame rates will probably work better for if your camera's more static, because when it's low frame rate and it's being projected from the player's camera where you move it around, it makes things feel very laggy. However, if you have like a security camera or something that isn't moving a lot, and the actor on the ground is the thing that's moving, setting it to a lower frame rate will actually be kind of a cool effect, since it will like lag behind the thing that's running across the screen. Let's set this back to tick, and that will be all. If you do have any questions, then this is on my Discord, and I can share additional project files or kind of screenshots of what's going on, and that'd be all. Catch you later.